Have you ever thought how the people felt that were in the land of Canaan before the Israelites were? How they felt about the changing of their customs, the changing of their lives, the fact that they would lose their lives in battle, would be involved in having lack of trust in their gods, who was falling prey to the God of heaven, the God of Israel. As the people of Israel come in and take the land, they didn't have chariots and horses to be involved in bringing those chariots into battle, but they had the Almighty God, and they had behind it the promises of God. And what we've observed in chapters 11, as we'll see in chapter 12, especially in this section, is that God is bringing together promises that he's made, even back to Abraham, and he's fulfilling it now. But here the children of Israel been in captivity for 430 years. That's a lot of time. We're going to have about half of that for our nation to be in existence next year. But all of that is being brought now to fruition. And now here you have the people in Philistia, the people in Canaan, the people in Lebanon, that eastern coast, that coast of the Mediterranean Sea, all the inhabitants. Now I thought, what were the inhabitants thinking? And it might help us to realize that what we're seeing here is that God's bringing his force, which you wouldn't think, who's Israel? Who is God, as Pharaoh would say, but he would learn who God is by the punishment they would bring upon him. But we ask the question, with those thoughts about how did God harden the inhabitants' hearts in Canaan? And you'll notice that in verse 20. For it was of Jehovah. Let me read verse 19. There was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel, save the Hivites and the inhabitants of Gibeon. They took all in battle. For it was of Jehovah to harden the hearts to come against Israel in battle, that they might utterly destroy them. So a heart was hardened before they come to battle. And what was the purpose of Jehovah? To destroy them. Yes. How would you like to be on that at that end of it? When you've lived in this area, this has been your home, and all of a sudden here in time, maybe you're 40 years old, maybe you're 60, maybe you're 80, maybe you just got married, you don't have children yet, but all of a sudden your life is changing. A lot of it you're running for cover, you're running for safety. And what we've seen here is that God doesn't leave anyone breathing alive when he takes these cities. There were some escaped, but it was total destruction upon idolatrous people who have had their time before in God's plan. Now, it's not maybe how, well, we ought to be taking care of that in 20 years, 50 years. We think in terms like that. God has made this plan for a long time ago, and now it's come to fruition. But did he give time for the idolatrous people to look up to heaven and realize who's behind it all? He did. Is he a jealous God? He is. What does that mean? He'll have no other gods before him. From the perspective of God, this is judgment day. And yet, what's my day like? It's not very good if I continue to be a Canaanite and not seeking peace. But he hardened their heart. So how does that work in us? And from the standpoint of this the text of Israel coming in, who were the two first cities that they conquered when they came across the Jordan River? Jericho. They thought they could take out Ai, but they were defeated, weren't they? God's in control. It's a God. I'm a holy God. And somebody disobeyed God's commandments, so they were defeated. So battle is that winning and losing. It's God's on your side. And he is involved in it. But then they took Ai, didn't they? We saw a whole chapter 10, the sun stands still. Who's behind that? It's God. So they could have time to completely wipe them out. And they did so. And then they made as they went for the west, they made that southern campaign. We just were involved here with the northern campaign. And when we get to chapter 13, we begin the second half of the book. These battles are set forth. He gives you how many kings they took in this second part of chapter 12. And then we're ready for chapters 13 to the end, where Joshua is no longer just he's a warrior leading them to war. He's dividing up land. And he's not a young man. When does he die? What age was he when he dies? We'll see at the end of the book. Surely you read the end of the book first, don't you? Be 110 years old. How old do you think he is now? We know from last week, Joshua 14:10, we'll begin to realize that Caleb comes along and he's 85. And he said these 45 years. Oh, they were in the wandering 40 years. Caleb's now, we're 45 years down the road. So if that is true, that we're looking at this is the fact that Joshua has got to have time to distribute all of this land. He's probably about 103, between 100 and 103. Did you think you'd be handing out land deeds at 100, 103 and getting it right? But that's what he's doing. He doesn't have much time left, and he's going to be involved, but he's been a soldier. He's leading the soldiers. And when you see people being defeated in your land, and it's just Israel, we'll get 5 kings, we'll take care of them. Their heart is hardened, so we will go into battle. They're not ever fearing to go into battle. They go into battle. And when you get so angry and so despondent and realize your world is collapsing, you have no problem of doing that. And that's what Pharaoh did. He finds the Red Sea's got them blocked and we're going after them. After he let them go. His heart was hardened, and it ends in their destruction. And when people hearts are hardened, and they're maybe full of hatred, that destroys them. Hatred will do that. But here God, as he created man, he knows how men act, he knows how kings act, we have power. Then they were involved. We're not seeking peace. We're not seeking peace. But we are involved. We will go into battle with you. Who only made peace with Israel in all of these campaigns? Hivites, and they live in Gibeon. And he says that. There was not a city that made peace for the children of Israel. They're already go to battle. Who was the smart ones here? I think the Gibeonites. They lied too in order for them to have peace with them. And Israel made an oath. It shows you how important that oath is before God. And they became their servants. Even up through the kings and Solomon and so forth. They became the servants, David, where they were involved in, that's what they were promised, that's what they wanted, and that's what they swore by to give them. That's what the Israelites did. But they're the ones that made peace. And it says they took all in battle. Here is Israel taking all in battle, for it was Jehovah to harden their hearts to come against Israel in battle. And God beat them, leading them with Joshua and the children of Israel obeying them. But the only ones that tried to make peace were giving us. Have we already seen that before? Did we see the details of that in Joshua? We did. How do they fake that they were coming from a long distance to honor Israel? What did their clothes look like? Dirty. Feet looked like the shoes like that. They had their wine skins, and they were all routed. They've been gone a long ways, and they hadn't. They hadn't been gone that long, but they deceived the people. And here's the little lesson we learned. What was the problem? Why couldn't God see that? He could, but he's never talked to about it. They never consulted God about this situation. They were to take all of the people. They were to destroy them all. But indeed, but they didn't consult God. That's what we ought to be able to do. But God uses darkness to defeat darkness. And we see that with Jesus, don't we? That indeed he took the jealousy of people. He's got more followers than I do, the Jewish leadership. It wasn't what their agenda thought it would be. The political climate was there, that they thought indeed Messiah is going to come and defeat Rome. And Jesus comes along, and even to the point of going to hit the cross, my kingdom is not of this world. I'm not in battle with you, Caesar, or Pilate, your lieutenant, his lieutenant. I'm not here to do that. Purely a spiritual kingdom he was setting up. Saving the souls of people is what he was about. And he defeated Satan through Satan, who had power of the darkness. Jesus said, now the power of darkness, you got it. But through that darkness, he defeats them and conquers the wisdom of men at the same time. If we can just kill Jesus, we'll eliminate the movement. And what does that do? It didn't stop, and it increased. And we see the church in Acts the 6th chapter is growing, and it's exponentially, and it's growing even in a time when they're getting ready to kill Stephen, after they have been persecuting the apostles and the disciples. In the earlier chapters of Acts, the church still grew. And you weren't going to silence the people. They grew, they preached the gospel. They kept on going. And so here was darkness, jealousy, idea of people and looking to themselves. And that's how Satan destroyed his work. And we're out here to continue that centuries later. We're here to beat the devil at his game. Is he still working? He still works on us, doesn't he? And that's what we're seeing. So you may look at these chapters of Joshua as being, we're going to sell the dividing of the land. That may not be important to you, but wonder if you're a recipient in your tribe, and would you be happy to see what land you're going to get? We'd be very happy about that. And put ourselves back in the time, these are important records. And you'll notice that when we get to chapter 19, we'll see they already had it documented. They kind of divided out in 7 areas and walking through the land and how it's going to be divided. And Joshua is instrumental in having that happen. So there's the hardening of the hearts. We have the Gibeonites making peace. Now question number 14, why would the mention of the Anakim be important in the summary of taking the land? Why would that part be very, very important for us at this point?
These were the giants that they were talking about.
That's right.
Before they started wondering that this man was filled with giants.
That's right. And David?
Well, I was going to say, and if they could defeat, with God's help, of course, if they could defeat these race of giants, the Anakim, then, that shows they can defeat anything.
Well, yeah, and we were looking at Numbers 13. What were the people of Israel afraid of? Giants. That's what led them to have to wander in the wilderness for another 38 years after they came out of Egyptian bondage. Fear of the giants, the long necks, literally in Hebrew, the long necks. I thought Goliath and him, he's 9'6" at least, and you think his body's proportionate. Now I'm thinking of giraffes, long necks. And I realized that could be a term, the Nephilim of there, but they said they were tall and they were large. And Numbers, the 13th chapter, is a very important part of the history of Israel in taking the land, because that's what caused them to have to wander in the wilderness, because they did not trust God, except 2 men of those spies. Who were they? We're studying his book. And what's the other one? 85-year-old Caleb. He gets more than 1 chapter in this section as we're about to enter in lesson 6. And good reason for it. And the land of Judah is all specified, and Caleb is a part of that. At the age of 85, he still wants to possess his promised possessions. And that's the heart that God wanted to see them. So here's a mention of the Anakim, because they were the giants. Numbers, the 13th chapter. those verses 32 through 33 set forth that. And that's why it becomes very, very important, and especially just to see that indeed these are the people that cause us to not go in the land when we should have. And we lost a whole generation of people, 20 and above. Joshua came at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debar, Anab, and from all the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua utterly destroyed them with their cities. There was none of the Anakim left in the land of the children of Israel, only where? Gaza, or as we heard it, Gaza, Gath, Ashdod. Did some remain? David fought a giant named Goliath. Did he come from that family? Good indication that he did. So where were those cities located on your map? Right near the Mediterranean Sea in the area called Philistia. And you'll find them. And so there were some that remained there. So Joshua took the whole land. All Jehovah spake unto Moses. There's bringing together Joshua and in the leadership. Now Moses was promised. God had commanded Moses to do this, to wipe them all out. Joshua's fulfilling that. There's that connection where it's not chopped up and something new's happening. This is all about the promises of God. And Joshua gave it for an inheritance unto Israel according to their divisions by their tribes. And what had rest? The land had rest from war during this time, as he had gone in and destroyed them. And there were some that were left behind, like these giants were, and they would become people that will curse God, like Goliath did. And he'll be taken down in his time as well. So we began to see that, well, where did these giants still live? Ashdod, Gath, Gaza. They're still going to be there. All right, question number 16. What three tribes received the land east of the Jordan? So we're going to come into chapter 12, and we'll just go to whether questions are set forth. Now these are the kings of the land whom children of Israel smote and possessed their land beyond the Jordan toward the sun rising from the valley of Arnon unto Mount Hermon. So all of a sudden, when he says beyond the Jordan from the sun rising, so which side of the Jordan are we talking from? We're talking about, well, we're in the Gilead, we're in that Gilgal, we're at that camp that's on the west side of the Jordan, but where does the sun rise? I know this is opposite for you, it's just me. So it rises from the east. Beyond the Jordan is on the east side of the Jordan River. So what we're having recorded here is the things that Moses gave as an inheritance. And we ask, what three tribes are we talking about here in these first 6 verses? As now when the record comes, he's talked about the battles being fought. Chapter 12 now speaks about the record, and we're looking at chapter 12. So all of these things we were reminded of, that happened with what 3 tribes? Let's get those down. Okay, Reuben, Gad, and then is Manasseh a half-tribe? Half-tribe Manasseh. And we remember that Og and Bashan took their land, fought against them, defeated them. And they, indeed, this is where those 2.5 tribes wanted to be located. So what we remember, God said, well, we don't want you to be just sitting here and have this land and not help your brothers on the other side. So you're going to have to go fight those battles first, then you can have this. And now we have the record that's taking place that belongs to them. So let's notice, if you have it's good to have a mental map, and you can put this, you can put the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee, or as we're saying here, the Lake of Chinnereth. It's the Sea of Galilee, Tiberias, different names at the time. But you have those bodies of water, and we're on the east side of that. At the very bottom, near that land of Moab, you will have, we're looking at these in this chapter from south to north. And that's how they won the battle on the west side, south to north. Come in the middle, south to north. And that's how we said, here, why would Reuben be first? He's firstborn. There's one reason, but he's spoken about these 2.5 tribes. That here, Reuben is that. If you go from the south, Reuben is there. In the middle is Gad, and then the half tribe of Manasseh is up north near the Sea of Galilee. So around that southeastern part of the Dead Sea, you have Reuben. You have Moab and Edom, those nations. And that's where you have them. So he speaks about that. So he possessed the land beyond the Jordan toward the sun rising in the valley of Arnon unto Mount Hermon, and all the Arabah eastward. Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, ruled from Ariar, which is on the edge of the valley of Arnon. And in that city is the middle valley, and half Gilead, even unto the river Jabbok, and the border of the children of Ammon. And the Arabah under the Sea of Chinnereth. So there is that wilderness section or valley section, and the Sea of Chinnereth is the Sea of Galilee in our times. Even the Salt Sea, that's the Dead Sea, eastward. The way to Beth Shemesh, and on the south under the slopes of Pisgah, that's where he's looking over, near Jericho in that section. So all of these 2.5 tribes, they're going to be located there in the border of Og, king of Bashan. The remnant of Rephaim dwelt at Ashtaroth and Edrei, and ruled in Mount Hermon, and all the Bashan, the border of the Geshurites and the Maacathites, and the Gilead border of Sihon, king of Heshbon. So we're taking his land. And as Moses, the servant of Jehovah, and the children of Israel smote them, Moses sees alive. He was still alive. Joshua hadn't come about yet. But here's that record bringing us up to date. Coherence, bringing Moses and Joshua together. And Moses, the servant of Jehovah, gave it for a possession unto the Reubenites, south, middle, Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. And so it's just setting forth the record. And we've seen it set forth, but we're reviewing it here. How many kings fell to Joshua and Israel as they do the battle fighting? Joshua's leading them. How many kings fell to them? 31. Did you count them just to make sure the Bible's correct? Or is there inherent error in the Bible? Did you count them? A good lawyer doesn't ask the question unless he knows the answer. I counted them. And I counted them twice, and it's 31. And here's all the listing that we wondered is how many were there. We're told here. And so verse 7, these are the kings of the land whom Joshua and the children of Israel smote beyond the Jordan westward. Now we're across the Jordan River, westward, from Belgad in the valley of Lebanon, even unto Mount Halak, and he begins to set forth those. And then he begins, when he speaks about the kings, we pick up in the latter part of verse 8, in the hill country, in the lowland, in the Arabah, that we start that in the north of the Sea of Galilee all the way down to the Salt Sea, even unto the Red Sea. That it's a wilderness type thing, but it's a valley where the waters are flowing, and the slopes and the wilderness in the south, and the Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, Hivite, and the Jebusite. And the king of Jericho, 1. God's counting with you, okay? But he doesn't go to 2, he says 1. This is 1 king. And we have that list. So the king of Jericho, would that be the first one they conquered? And the king of Ai finally beat him. But notice the distinctiveness and how detailed A lot of times our Bibles are. And the king of Ai, which is beside Bethel. What? What did we remember about Ai and Bethel? What connection did they have? And is the Bible accurate that Bethel be west of Ai? He's claiming it here. Did you look on the map to see if that's true? I did. Didn't have to because we studied it earlier. Remember the ambush that Joshua planned? And he took 30,000 men are going to go take this. He took 5,000 and he put them between Bethel and Ai. And that's Bethel's to the west, Ai is to the east, and he put them between that. And what happens when our Bible speaks about the battle? Now, ambush takes place, Israel in front, they all flee. Who joins them? What city joins Ai to go after the Israelites? Bethel. All the men of Bethel and Ai were destroyed. Why couldn't they see the 5,000? Bethel comes along and says, hey, there's a trap here. You look at the terrain there, they could hide behind those hills. And I'll talk about that. We have pictures of that, where you could hide an army. And that's what happened. To destroy all the inhabitants, Bethel and Ai, those fighting men, they were destroyed. And just to kind of read, Bethel's on the west, how true that is. Our Bible is geographically accurate, not only just spiritually accurate. And we're dealing with history. And that becomes very important to them. All right? The second part of that question is that I ask you to divide the verses in Kings who fell into the two campaigns. Now I'm going to see how smart you are. Now you're not smart if you didn't do it. Okay? That's not good. But it made you look at the divisions of this chapter. Here's the kings of the land whom Joshua and the children of Israel took. Verses 1 through 6 is what Moses did. So I just say, whatever is in the first 6 verses, there you are. And those 31, you can write them down if you want to, but I counted them and I read them. And really, that's what divides these two chapters. What God did through Moses on the east, what God did through Joshua and Israel obeying the commandments of God on the west. And now we're finished and we're ready to be involved in distributing that land. We're ready now for the second half of this book. And it begins this way. Now Joshua was old and well stricken in years. What's old to you? Well stricken in years. Well, at 40 you may feel old, but you're not. And when you start feeling pain, well stricken in years is stricken. It's not, wonderful years, it's stricken in years. They're going to be more difficult. And the older we get, that's what happens. Caleb is wonderful. 85 years old, he's ready to go like he was 40. He said so. But here he's saying, here in Joshua was well stricken in years, and we know when his years ended, 110 years of age. So we're looking at here that this battle was involved in probably taking over 7 years for this battle to be completed, that they were coming into the land. That's why I picked about 103, between 100 and 103, at least 100 years old. I don't think I'd be too far off. That we're looking at how it was distributed, and Joshua is involved in this. Thou art old and well stricken in years, and there remaineth something that's very important. So we enter into chapter 6. Though the land had reset from war, that's chapter 11, what still was needed to be done in the land of promise? We open chapter 13. There remaineth yet very much land to be possessed. Here they had the promise of land. This is the promised land. It's promised. Now you need to possess it. What good is a promise that this land's going to be yours, and if you don't possess it? That's what Caleb wanted to do. I want to possess my possession. And that's what we're going to be seeing these next few chapters. And so this is the land that yet remains. So here's what remained. And we asked in this section, what 3 tribes of Canaan were not driven out? There's a lot of things that happen in here. Go ahead. Yes.
Comment on what you made, you talked about the promise. It's a good example that people talk about the gifts are unconditional from God. You have a good example here. He promised them the land. And then they come say, well, you have it. I've given it to you. Go and take it.
That's right.
I've given you this, do what I asked you to do.
It's kind of like we've been promised eternal life, but we're going to have to go take it, don't we? We have to come to Jesus. We have to be involved in living a faithful life, and that's what we're striving to do. So there could be promises, but you still have to believe to the point of obey in order for that to come to about. Earlier, I mentioned the 3 areas on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, and then we'll put the 3 tribes in there. See if you can do this with me. This is the land that remained. That land, not the tribes. This is the land that remained. All the regions of the Philistines. So that's Philistia. That's Ashdod, Gath. All those places where the giants, some of them still existed. You had that land. That's the southern part, closer to Egypt, in that section. In the middle section, we'll see how this is described. Even under the border of Ekron northward, which is reckoned to the Canaanites. So here in that land of the Canaanites is where we're going to be looking at. That's in the middle. I'm going from south to north, just like I did with the tribes inheriting. South to north, and you got that area, which is called, we'll call it the Canaan, where the Canaanites were. And then on the south and all the land, verse 4, the land of the Canaanites. In verse 5, and the land of Gebalites and all Lebanon toward the sun rising, from Balgad under the Mount Hermon. So that's to the north. We're looking now at the area above Sidon, Tyre and Sidon. We're looking at that particular area of regions. So I kind of break it. Philistia, the Canaanites area, that's Canaan, and what we call Lebanon on that side. Thank you. Up to the north, and a lot of your maps, it stops at the top of your maps, and my atlas sometimes with Tyre and Sidon. It's above that. Those regions were still what they hadn't possessed yet. They hadn't completely done those. So what 3 tribes in those sections were not driven out? So we talk about verse 3, and that regions of the Philistines, that region, you had the Geshurites. They were involved in that. We see in verse 2. We could talk more about verse 13. Nevertheless, the children of Israel drove not out the Geshurites, nor the Maacathites, but Geshur and Maacath dwelt in the midst of Israel unto this day. They never did drive them out. But he mentioned the Geshurites, and that was the premium one that we're talking about. And then in the middle of that, you have the Canaanites that were there. And then Gebal would be the area around Lebanon. And that they're interesting people because they would take out rock. And Solomon would use that ability for them to the temple of God. We'll see in 1 Kings. They're there. But they were a people that are going to be lasting, even in the days of Solomon. But they quarried rocks. They chiseled out rocks. And that's what they were known for on that coast. So those were where a lot of commerce would come through those areas. But indeed, those would be the tribes in Canaan that were not driven out. And we see, well, the giants, and we see the Gerizzites, they were involved in being that primary, that one tribe that were involved in that area. So that was to be the point that we're looking at here, is that some were not driven out, and some remain, and even to this day. How was Joshua in the time of dividing the land among the tribes? I picked 100. You picked a better one? Or maybe another one? Caleb's now 85. That means Joshua is a lot older than he was 40 years back. That didn't change. But 15 years difference. But there's a sense that he had to be an old man. I hadn't thought a lot about Joshua being old. I think, well, Caleb's 85, maybe he's about 80, something like that. But he dies at 110. This battle stuff is kind of depleted in 7 years. So he could have been around 100 years old at this particular time. In chapters 13 through 17, what 5 tribes received their inheritance? So this is kind of the start of the last half of the book. So let's talk about these 5. Have we got the Joshua's old? Here's the tribes. Here's on the western side that we have, and so we're looking at all of those being fulfilled. And if you add the ones that received their inheritance, we've seen that 11 and 12. We see what happened on the east side. We got Reuben, we got Gad, we got the half tribe of Manasseh. That's 2.5 tribes. And then in chapters 13 through 17, we complete that number. And who are we looking at? Verse 8. With him the Reubenites and the Gadites received their inheritance, which Moses gave beyond the Jordan. So those are your east side. So Reuben, Gadites, Manasseh, those are the tribes. He starts there in chapter 13. And so in verse 15, Moses gave unto the tribe the children of what? Who? Reuben. Verse 24, Moses gave unto the tribe of Gad, the children of Gad, according to their families. And these are verse 32, these are inheritance which Moses distributed to the plains of Moab beyond the Jordan at Jericho eastward. Because in verse 29, Moses gave the inheritance unto the half tribe of Manasseh. So chapter 13 is speaking about these tribes, and for Reuben, south to north. Chapter 14, we have Joshua. Chapter 15, Joshua, with Caleb. And in chapter 15, verse 3, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, he gave a portion among the children of Judah. And he gives all the details. So you got chapters 14 and 15, you're dealing with Judah. Okay, and it stops there. So you go up through there, and you'll have not only Judah, but you'll go up to Ephraim, and we'll have that, and Manasseh on up the. We'll go north to south there, as the areas on the eastern, on the Mediterranean, which is looking out there to on the west coast, Philistia, Canaan, and Lebanon. All those things, you kind of go from south to north. That's kind of the way they fought the battle. And that's the kind of way it's recorded here in history. So in these chapters, we have 5 tribes receiving their inheritance. And we'll talk more about that next time, the Lord willing. Thank you.